Hey guys, let's talk about my neighbor, sort of, my neighbor, the volcano. And that is not so good, actually, I have to say. Mount St. Adams in Washington. And, you might know Mount Rainier. That is a bad one. I don't like Mount Rainier when I look at it. It looks like it's going to do something, but there are other volcanoes. I mean, the West Coast is on the Pacific Ring of Fire, right? And there's the Cascadia Fault that could produce a magnitude 9 earthquake and then maybe unleash everything. So, very unusual activity at Mount St. Adams. So let's have a closer look at this. So the USGS reports the earthquake activity at Mount St. Adams has increased last month. Despite that, for now, the volcano remains at the lowest volcanic alert level. Mount St. Adams is a stratovolcano. So what is that? Stratovolcanoes have relatively steep sides and are more cone-shaped than shield volcanoes. Shield volcanoes are more flat, right? This is something that you could see in Hawaii or in Iceland. So basically a stratovolcano is really something that is obvious. You see it, right? That's what you see with these volcanoes that are along the West Coast: Mount Baker, Mount Rainier, Mount Hood, Mount Adams, Mount St. Helens, right? All these volcanoes look like a big mountain. That's what a stratovolcano is, right? They are formed from viscous, sticky lava that does not flow fast or flow easily. That's why it gets stuck in the areas where it's coming out, building up these big mountains. And if you follow my channel, even in Iceland, where we had that very fast-flowing liquid lava, after a few weeks even there, it was forming these smaller cones that looked like a mini stratovolcano, right? Something was building up there. So stratovolcano lava builds up around the vent where the eruption is coming from, and then it forms this volcanic mountain with these steep slopes. So last month in September, USGS reports an increase in earthquake activity at this volcano, at Mount Adams. And this is a combined research from the US Geological Survey, the USGS, the Cascades Volcano Observatory, that's local, right? And the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network. So they are monitoring these areas along the West Coast. So there were a total of 6 earthquakes at Mount Adams. They were ranging between 0.9, almost 1, and 0.2 in magnitude. And they were recorded on a seismic station near that stratovolcano in the Cascade area last month. And previously, that same station has only recorded 1 earthquake every 2 or 3 years. So now 6 earthquakes in 1 month. And if you've been following my channel for quite a while, you know earthquakes tend to mean something if they're happening in a volcanic area or at the volcano, underneath the volcano. It usually means something's coming up to the surface, mostly magma, hydrothermal fluids, gases, whatever, but this is caused by magma. So is this volcano preparing to do something? Gosh, that would not be so great if you look where it is, right? And the monitoring of Mount St. Adams began in 1982. And since then, this very last September, so just a few days ago, that September ended, that represents the most earthquakes located at this volcano in a month ever recorded, ever since recording began in 1982. That is significant. So for now, they're saying no earthquakes were really felt at the surface. The locations and the depth are not well constrained at the moment due to the sparse seismic network at Mount Adams. So Mount Adams. So there is not such a vast seismic network. I believe there's way more around Mount St. Helens, right? Because Mount Adams seems to be quiet, but now it's not. So they better run and put more seismic stations up there, in my opinion, right? So that's why they're not really super sure how deep these earthquakes were. Plus, because of that sparse seismic network, smaller earthquakes that might have occurred, they don't know about this. The seismologists have been unable to locate them. So you would think that if you have volcanoes along the west coast, that at least everyone has a good basic coverage with these instruments, right? I mean, I understand that some might have a little more, like Mount St. Helens or something, but at least that they're monitored decently enough so that if something happens there, like it's happening at Mount Adams right now, that they definitely are able to draw conclusions. But it seems they're not. It seems they're money spent for other stuff, it seems. Mount Adams, well, you can't even call it a seismic network then, because they only have one seismic station, guys. One. This is a massive mountain. This is a big volcano. And that station is about 7 miles southwest of the stratovolcano's peak. That comes in addition. So that one seismic station is not able to give us an overall comprehension of what has happened there last month. So that makes it a little scary, I think. So I know some people in that area that thought this is a good bug out place to be away from all the nonsense that's going on in the world. But you know, that's what I always say. If you have a bug out place, it needs to be kind of safe from natural disasters, because, you know, you build greenhouses, you put plants in, you build your homestead, you have animals, and then there's a tornado, there's a hurricane. We tragically see it right now, what has happened after Hurricane Helene, right? So, well, if a volcano erupts with a lava flow and stuff like this, it's also not too great, in my opinion, right? So since this seismic activity has increased so much, the USGS said that they want to install more temporary seismic stations. I think they should be permanent, but at least temporary to the south and southwest of Mount Adams. So at least something. So these, what they're saying, additional seismic stations will allow them to better detect and pinpoint earthquakes in the area around the mountain or underneath the volcano, right? Volcanic alert level is at green. That means normal right now, despite these earthquakes. So they say the seismic activity that they're observing, although they're not really observing it that much, is still considered a typical background activity for an active volcano. Yeah, you hear me right. It's an active volcano. So build more stations around an active volcano. That's my opinion. So, but there's other activity that could alert us or pinpoint in a direction that this volcano might do something pretty soon. So there's other activity, and that includes like how is the steaming, how is the thermal venting, or other thermal features, or any land rise or something like this. And they said none of this has been reported at Mount St. Adams so far. Well, has it not been reported because they don't have measuring instruments there, or what? That's what I would like to know, right? Of course, they're relating to satellite images. They also say there is no detectable ground deformation. So that is good, right? If there was ground deformation, that the land is already rising, that means something's coming up to the surface, right? If you're watching my channel, that's what's happening in Iceland again. There's a shallow magma chamber at 4 kilometers, roughly 4 kilometers depth, and that's always filling up. then it reaches the point of maximum elasticity and it sends out an eruption, it subsides, and then it starts filling up again. So land rise plus earthquakes or increased steam activity is never good, right? We also have that in Italy, near Naples, Campi Flegrei, land rise and earthquake activity, increased earthquake activity. So not good there right now. Plus, they have just confirmed that the magma is closer to the surface than they think. Super interesting. Check out the videos. They're in the end screen. So something else, what they have looked at is the degassing. That is also an alert level activity that is green right now. But, here comes the but. Mount Adams, not sand, currently lacks a dedicated volcanic gas sampling program, right? That's the problem. I mean, you can say, well, everything's normal. Yeah, it is normal because you don't know. If you put your head in the sand, you don't see what's coming, right? If you don't have measuring instruments, how do you know? You just don't, right? That's why putting this at a green level doesn't really calm me down, I think. So that's why they're saying the USGS has released a news release and they say it is unknown whether or not the stratovolcano has vented gas recently. So that green level is really giving, at least for me, a false sense of security. So how expensive can these seismic monitoring stations be that there is not enough money in a country like the United States to monitor their own volcanoes? That's a little bit shocking to me. So this ring of fire, they also call it the Cascade Volcanic Arc. So there are 16 volcanoes along that arc. As I just said, Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, right? And it starts from basically Northern California to British Columbia in Canada. There's quite a few volcanoes as well. And Mount Adams is located around 50 miles southwest of Yakima and 30 miles north of the White Salmon Hood River area. That's along the Columbia River. It's a tall mountain. It's 12,277 feet tall. So this is not a teeny tiny volcanic cone. This is a massive mountain. It's the second tallest active volcano in Washington behind Mount Rainier. That is not far from Mount Adams, right? So that's a significant mountain that should be monitored a little bit more. I'm really shocked when I read the USGS press release. But it might be behind Mount Rainier in height, but it is the largest in the state when you look at the area that it occupies and by volume. So that sink in, and it shows unusual activity, but they don't have monitoring instruments, right? Mount Adams last erupted between like a timeline like 3,800 years ago and 7,600 years ago. So that's quite a large time frame where it erupted. So the USGS, despite the fact that they have it at a green level right now, they still consider Mount Adams a high threat volcano. High threat volcano, according to its National Volcanic Threat Assessment. That's the second highest level. And again, I might repeat myself. Why are there not more monitoring instruments there? Raises a big question mark, really. Let's compare this activity a little bit, but keep in mind the lower ones, they can't even capture them. They don't know, right? So Mount Adams' neighbors, like the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network's earthquake tracker, has reported at Mount St. Helens 77 earthquakes over the past 30 days. Mount Rainier had 16 over the past 30 days. So yeah, they're having more, right? But they're not usually that quiet like Mount Adams. So if such a quiet, high-level danger volcano that is considered to be active shows these signs of increased activity, it should be concerning, especially when they really don't know what's going on because they are not monitoring it that well. So Mount Rainier, despite its earthquake activity, the USGS also has Mount Rainier at a green, like normal volcano alert level. But also what they think about Mount Rainier, it is still considered the most likely volcano to erupt next in the Cascadia or Cascade Volcanic Arc. And they say it's the, listen to this, the most dangerous volcano in the nation. That doesn't sound good. So I guess my gut feeling was right. It was years ago. I was looking at a farm property that was basically in the mountains, and where that property ended, it was very steep going down, but there was also already like equestrian infrastructure in place, but it was going down the hills, and then it was just forest, and then it was going up to Mount Rainier. And the property was really nice, but I looked at this and I looked at Mount Rainier and I didn't have a good feeling. I didn't like that mountain. And at that time, I really didn't know much about its threat level or anything, but I just had a feeling, nope, that feels too close. And if you want to move to this area like Graham, Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia, Centralia, basically these areas of like the southwestern area of Washington, look at the potential lava flow areas where the lava would flow from Mount Rainier, because it will flow down towards the ocean. And then if your area is in the way, and there are highly densely populated areas in areas that could see a potential lava flow. So you don't want to live there or have your bug out place there, because that's not good, right? So always check that out. There are websites where you can look at potential flow patterns that tell you where it most likely would go down, because it's a steep volcano. It's also a stratovolcano, so the deep slopes are sending the lava in certain directions. So Mount Rainier was named to, they have this list, it's called the Decades Volcano List, which includes these volcanoes that are considered to be the 16 most dangerous volcanoes in the world. And that's quite close to me, I would say. And I know to some of my viewers as well that have told me you live in the Seattle area, for example. So the 16 most dangerous volcanoes in the world, you know, if you look at that list, probably, I know you know my channel, there's Campi Flegrei, there's Vesuvius, I mean, they're bad guys, right? And then 16, that's not many if you see how many volcanoes the world has. So the 16 dangerous, they must be really, really dangerous, right? And Mount Rainier is in that list. That is not good. Why is it in that list? Well, because of two factors: high eruption risk and proximity to densely populated areas. That's the problem that we also have in Italy. For Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius, there's roughly at least 3 million people right in between them, and in the direct red zones, 500,000 people at Campi Flegrei, 750,000 at Vesuvius, but everyone in between will also be greatly affected, right? Campi Flegrei, potential supervolcano. Check out my playlist about volcanic activity in Italy. There's all the information you need to know if you want to have a nice vacation in Italy. Italy has a lot of volcanoes and a lot is going on there right now. So who identifies these risks? That is the International Association of Volcanology and Chemistry of the Earth's Interior. That's how they are called. So they are making this list. So where is Mount St. Helens in that list? Well, Mount St. Helens had the most seismic activity this September. It is also the most recent in this Cascade Volcanic Arc that has actually erupted. We might remember the eruption in the 80s, right? It has a major eruption that occurred on May 18th in 1980, when basically its top blew off. So Mount St. Helens is also a buddy of Mount Rainier when it comes to their level of danger. They are both considered very high threat volcanoes, the highest level of threat. So again, if I have a volcano that is considered active and one of the 16 most dangerous volcanoes in the world at the highest threat level, you put one seismic station 7 kilometers away from the mountain, I think there's work to do. And I think these temporary stations, let me know in the comments, guys, what do you think about this? I think this is not good. Let's discuss this. So check out the videos in the end screen. There's very, very interesting stuff. Something really strange is going on in Iceland. So check out that video here for sure. That's my latest Iceland video. It has a lot of information. They want to search for the man that fell into the crack. That crack that opened after these heavy earthquakes in the middle of the town underneath a home. The man fell in there in January and he vanished because the crack turned to be deeper and wider. There was an underground lake. So now the family wants the officials to find the man like months later. How? We'll look into this because the investigation that was occurring after the incident, the report has been released, and it's terrible, shocking information in that report about what has happened prior to the worker falling in there. So check this out. But also scientists are saying that Iceland could see a continuous volcanic eruption, like continuous, right? Not eruption, break, eruption. Nope. Continuous lava flow. And that on the Reykjanes Peninsula, where the most people live in Iceland, Reykjavik, Keflavik Airport, the capital, lava flows continuously. They could flow into all these areas. That would be an absolute disaster for the whole country. Check out this video. I see you very soon. If you want to support the channel, check out the links in the description. Thank you so much, guys. Stay safe, be prepared. Bye-bye.